Building on the library, bow tie diagrams, kill chain views, and pathway framing provide clear ways to reason about cause and effect. A bow tie shows threats and preventive controls on the left, consequences and reactive controls on the right, and the event in the center, which keeps attention on both stopping and limiting harm across time. A kill chain view follows attacker stages from reconnaissance to actions on objectives, which helps map detections to the steps where they have the highest value and least cost. Pathway framing unites these ideas by describing how a specific threat reaches a specific asset through a few believable steps that people can test and measure in practice. Keep diagrams simple. If a picture needs a legend and a tutorial, it will not help during design or drills, and it will confuse readers who did not build it or who see it months later. When framed well, these views make gaps visible, show where controls overlap, and reveal the next best place to strengthen prevention, spotting, or recovery without heavy debate or guesswork. From there, sensitivity analysis on key assumptions shows which inputs truly drive the result. Change one variable at a time, like detection speed, vendor reliability, control failure rates, or user error, and watch how the range of loss or likelihood moves across the scenarios you care about most. If a small change in a single factor swings outcomes widely, that factor deserves monitoring, testing, and probably funding to stabilize it through design or training. Imagine discovering that mean time to detect shapes most of your loss curve. That insight turns a general wish for better monitoring into a targeted plan for new sensors, tuned rules, and staff practice. Keep the exercise simple. A few well-chosen parameters tell a clearer story than a model with dozens of levers that no one trusts, and a chart with 2 scenarios can often move a budget discussion faster than a thick report full of dense tables. Sensitivity work tunes hidden bets into visible choices, which is the heart of mature risk planning and the fastest way to reduce both exposure and uncertainty in the next quarter. Building on analysis, aggregating risk across portfolios and dependencies helps leaders see concentration rather than isolated items. A portfolio view groups related systems, products, or vendors so you can measure how risk stacks up when services share data, platforms, or identity paths that create common failure modes. Dependencies matter because a single shared control, like a central identity provider, logging pipeline, or network edge, can turn many small risks into one large exposure if it fails at the wrong moment. Imagine mapping residual risk across 10 products that all rely on the same token service. The aggregate view may justify hardening that service ahead of flashier projects and may also suggest a backup instance with separate keys. Stay honest. Aggregation should avoid double counting and should explain methods clearly so reviewers know whether values were summed, averaged, or normalized by revenue or user impact during comparison. When leaders can see concentration points, they can sequence treatments to break links, add redundancy, and move the whole portfolio to a safer place with fewer moves and clearer trade-offs. From there, prioritizing treatments against constraints and existing roadmaps turns risk insight into scheduled work. Constraints include funding, staffing, maintenance windows, vendor lead times, and commitments already on the calendar, all of which shape what is feasible in the next quarter without breaking service promises to customers. A useful approach is to connect each treatment to a concrete outcome, reduce exposure, improve detection, or limit blast radius, and then place it where it fits operationally with the least disruption. Imagine choosing to deploy phishing-resistant authentication during a planned identity upgrade, rather than as a separate project. The same dollar moves 2 goals at once and cuts rollout risk. Keep choices explicit. Write down why one item ranked above another, which dependency it rides on, and what proof will mark it done, so trade-offs are visible and can be reviewed later without argument or memory gaps. When risk priorities align with the roadmap, teams stop context switching, progress speeds up, and the scorecard improves for reasons everyone can see and trust across releases. Building on scheduling, trigger conditions for re-rating exposures keep the picture accurate between full assessments. A trigger is a clear event that forces a fresh look at likelihood, impact, or both, such as a new exploit, a major dependency change, a control failure, or a service entering a new market with different rules. By writing triggers in advance, teams avoid delay and debate when the event happens, because the decision to reevaluate was already agreed and documented with names. Imagine stating that a provider outage longer than 2 hours or a confirmed credential stuffing wave will reopen the risk entry and update exposure and treatment dates within 1 business day. Make triggers simple. They should be short sentences linked to systems and owners, and they should point to evidence that proves the condition occurred, so no one argues about facts or timing during reviews. With triggers in place, the register stays current, and leaders learn about real changes in exposure when it matters, not months later in a routine cycle at which point choices are narrower and costs are higher. From there, decision forums with named approvers, clear escalation, and disciplined documentation turn analysis into authority. A forum is the standing meeting or record where risk acceptances, funding choices, and treatment approvals are made by the people who own the outcome and can assign work. Escalation rules explain when a decision moves upward, such as when residual risk exceeds tolerance, when legal triggers are in play, or when cross-team dependencies create conflicts that cannot be solved locally. Documentation captures the proposal, the alternatives considered, the evidence reviewed, and the final decision with timestamps and signatures, so the story is complete for future readers and auditors. Keep the forum tight. Too many attendees slow choices and blur responsibility, while too few starve the process of needed views from operations, finance, privacy, and legal, which weakens follow-through. When decision forums run on a reliable rhythm and record their outputs, teams know where to bring issues, leaders see the same facts, and progress can be audited without drama, surprise, or conflicting memories. Building on governance, metrics for velocity, aging, and residual movement make the program's heartbeat visible. Velocity shows how quickly risks move from identification to funded treatment to closure, which reveals whether analysis translates into action that ships and sticks. Aging highlights entries stuck beyond their target dates, separated by severity and owner, so leaders can remove blockers, add help, or rebalance workload before deadlines slip further and credibility erodes. Residual movement tracks whether overall exposure is actually falling after treatments, not just whether items change status in the register. And it can be sliced by product, vendor, or control domain to find pockets of drag. Keep metrics plain. A small set of clear charts over time beats a crowded dashboard, and each metric should have an owner who explains what changed and why in a brief note attached to the report. When velocity rises, aging falls, and residual exposure moves downward, the organization can show that risk work is not a report, but a force that shapes real outcomes, budgets, and delivery priorities that customers feel. From there, adding forecast error and surprise rate brings accountability to prediction. Forecast error compares expected loss or downtime against actual outcomes after incidents or tests, which shows whether estimates were realistic or biased and whether confidence statements were justified. Surprise rate counts events that fell outside stated ranges or confidence levels, revealing when uncertainty was understated and where models need revision or more data. Imagine estimating 2 hours of recovery for a core service and taking 8. The error prompts a root cause review of staffing, tooling, dependencies, and assumptions, and it may change triggers for re-rating. Keep the tone constructive. The goal is to improve inputs and ranges, not to blame teams for honest uncertainty. And the best response to surprises is better measurement and simpler models that align with how work is actually done. Over time, shrinking forecast error and lowering surprise rate prove that the program is learning, which makes leaders more willing to bet on risk-based plans, to fund the next set of improvements, and to defend decisions publicly. In closing, risk should inform priority and investment, not just produce reports. When appetite, scenarios, pathway views, and ranges come together with triggers, forums, and clear metrics, decisions become faster and more credible across departments. Leaders can see what matters now, what depends on what, and which actions will move exposure and uncertainty the most with the resources in hand and the time they can spare. Imagine a quarterly review where portfolio hotspots, treatment sequencing, and forecast accuracy appear on a single page. The conversation shifts from argument to action, and trade-offs are named plainly. Keep the system light. It should be rigorous enough to guide funding and simple enough to run every month without special effort, because consistency beats heroics and keeps attention on outcomes rather than ceremony. With this approach, teams make fewer bets based on hope, more decisions backed by evidence, and steady improvements that endure across leadership changes and product cycles, which is how risk work earns trust and keeps earning it year after year. Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.